What is up, Veronica? How are you doing?
Good, good. How are you? It's Tuesday. That's like Monday, I guess. We had yesterday off, Juneteenth.
I don't even know what days I'm
I,
in
my,
anymore.
you're like retired. You're living the dream.
Something like that. I don't know. Um, well, it's not as bad as my dad. He'll when he used to live at this cabin that we have, and he would. It got to the point where he forgot what day or date or time or whatever it was. It was kind of hilarious. He called and he's like, literally have no idea what day it is. So anyway, it's Tuesday or Monday, Saturday. I have no idea,
Whatever.
but whatever. So it's good to see you though. Yeah, for people who don't know who you are, quick intro.
Yeah, sure. My name is Veronica, as you can see on the screen, or if you're listening, you probably don't know Veronika Durgin. So I'm currently overseeing data at Saks, but I've spent my entire career working with data in all kinds of different roles. I don't actually say how many years it's been because people just start trying to figure out how old I am. I am old enough to have been through multiple cycles of where data is going and what we're trying to do. Absolutely love it. Started as, went to college as pre-med, which is like a fun fact. Know a
Mm.
bunch about biology, but ended up falling into my first role as a junior DBA. Absolutely loved it. Went back to college to get my master's degree in software engineering, and just kind of stuck with data. Just truly, truly love what I do.
That's super cool. Yeah, and I think when we hung out too, you mentioned some of the books that you read back in the day, and I'm not going to date you, but when you mentioned a few of the database books, it's like holy crap, yeah, you've been working in
Yeah.
the field for a bit.
I
So
have a very thick book that says SQL on it. I think it was written in like 2000. Uh, Still very much applicable. So SQL is a skill that you will use forever and ever.
it seems to be the case. Yeah, it's not going away. I think the death of SQL has been called many times and
Mhm.
um, hasn't happened. So yeah, that's interesting though. I mean, so you got started in data space, a while ago. I mean, what kept you going, through all the changes and I guess, and also the kind of the constants too in the industry, right? You mentioned SQL. Like, what kept you interested in this?
So I think like in general, and I probably could have done software engineering if I just fell into like programming role. It's logical. And when things don't make sense, you can keep trying to figure it out and it's still logical. And I think that's kind of what I really loved about it. I love learning, and it's like I love learning with the goal to understand. So if something kind of piques my interest, I'll just keep deep diving. So I'm very much like a T, like I will dive into something until I, get it enough, and then I move on to something else. But again, I think the biggest thing to me is that, computers are logical, and I just love figuring out that logic when it doesn't make sense.
That's really fascinating. What are you learning anything new right now?
Oh my gosh, so what am I doing right now? I guess I'm actually, so this whole LLM hype,
Hmm?
kind of trying to understand it, and mostly about like generative part of it, like trying to conceptually figure it out. But outside of that, I've actually been reading, or listening to books like Digital Mindset, talking about kind of like how companies become truly digital. I am also listening to a book called Zero to One, which
Good
is
book.
fascinating. Yeah, like it's incredible how, to me, this is like really incredible. Like the only way to go from zero to one is step outside the box. So we talk about rules and standards, and everybody has to follow rules and standards, but you don't innovate if you follow rules and standards. To
Hmm.
me, like it's such a mind twist. How do you not reinvent the wheel, but innovate at the same time? It's almost like the opposite things, right? So if you break the rules, are you doing a bad thing or actually doing a good thing? So
Hmm.
this is like kind of like becoming a little bit philosophical in my mind.
Zero to One was a really interesting book when I first read it because it did, I think, challenge a lot of assumptions that you've been, I guess, for
Like,
lack of a better word, programmed to believe.
yeah, like monopoly is a bad thing, and he's saying no, it's not.
Yeah.
And I'm like, huh. So there's like different sides to the same thing, and we're talking about, um, source of truth or common definition. There could be, depends how the angle you look at. There, like, we see different things even though we look at the same thing, right?
Hmm. Depends on your goals, right? So, I mean, if you don't want monopolies, you'll go against them. But if you're a company, I mean, I think inherently you'd want control over a market. So
But it's
that's
also, which is kind of like stuck in, again, I'm still early in that book, but with a
yeah.
monopoly, because you're not entirely focused on making money, you can actually take risks and invest in things that others that are hard competing can't. And I'm like, that makes total sense, right? Like Amazon's a great example. They can take risks and invest in things that others might not. So it's almost like money makes money, right? Like ultimately,
Hmm.
when you have that money to invest, it's really cool. Like monopoly is bad, but it's not really bad, and and then you get confused, and you're like, now I'm thinking about it.
Well, hopefully you start a monopoly with
Yeah,
something. I'm not sure what that would be, but maybe. Um, yeah, it was really interesting actually on the Amazon note. I was listening to a podcast the other day. Eugene Y, he was the one of the first business analysts at Amazon back in the '90s, but he was talking about how they are so good with their analytics even back in the '90s. In the early 2000s, they started anticipating maybe there's going to be a bit of a correction in the markets, and they knew sort of what they needed to do to grow the business because they had all the data, and so they got a giant credit facility, which saved them, right? I mean, a lot of other companies went out of business during the
right.
dot com bust, and Amazon continued to plow money into growth for many years,
Yeah,
and so that's a good example of just charging ahead when you especially when you have the data to support it and you kind of have a good understanding of your customers, and so
right.
and here they are today. So
And it's kind of, and you say in both, right? Like it's not just data. You also have to have understanding of your customer, which isn't
oh
just
yeah,
purely on data. And I love this, like,
yeah.
and we'll go in different direction, like data driven. Data driven is actually dangerous. You
Mm,
want to be like, you want to have understanding, you have to understand the vertical, and then use data to either, challenge your assumptions and decisions or support your assumptions and decisions. So it's another kind of like, to me, that's maturity of where
mm,
you're at. Everybody's like data driven, data driven. No, you can't blindly trust data, especially with generative LLMs that are hallucinating, right? Like
right.
you can't. You actually truly have to understand what you're looking at and then make decisions.
What's really interesting in that comment is I think it's a comment that somebody who's really mature with data um, can say. I think normally when I hear things like, oh, we just throw LLMs at everything, or let's be data driven, it tends to come from a place where I would say people haven't seen the bumps in the road, so to speak, with data. And so it's an interesting
I
comment.
I think
It's not
it's
something you would
also,
typically want to
yeah.
hear from a data person, right? So
I'm just naturally skeptical, and it just comes out like, it takes me, like, but again, like I need to understand first, at least understand enough, then I can, make decisions based on that. I know I don't blindly trust anybody or anything, and again,
oh.
probably personality. Yeah.
It's a good trait to have, though,
Yeah.
especially nowadays too. I think because MLMs, I about to say that it's Freudian
Oh,
slip. I
new,
live in
what's
Utah where
that?
they're everywhere. Multi-level marketing. No, but it's maybe there'll be an MLM for LLMs at some point. I'm pretty sure that somebody in my state of Utah is working on that. But no, I mean, given how pervasive LLMs are going to be, it's having a good BS detector is going to be worth a lot. I think it's the only thing that's going to save you, actually. So,
Yeah. It's, yeah, and again, like that's why it's funny. Technology, by technology make like we're just naturally lazy as humans. And I think LLMs is just the next thing that promises that we don't have to think too much and robots will do stuff for us. But in reality, we still have to think, right? That's,
mm,
I guess that's like, I'm sorry, you still have to talk to other people and you still have to think. and it's tiring, honestly.
Well, I mean, what would make it less tiring?
I don't know.
Or is being tired a good thing?
You know, it is a good thing. I think it's tiring. Take a break, take a vacation, or retire like you and not know what day of the week it is. No, I think it's just balance. It's a balance.
Hmm. Yeah, it is. Yeah, yeah. I guess it's true. I mean, I mean, I stopped taking a lot of meetings, for example. I think just to clear my head. There was a time I think, especially running the business, where there was like Mondays and Tuesdays are typically the days I would have meetings, and it was just back to back to back, like pretty much nonstop, like 9 to 5, just calls all the time, and
Yeah.
calls upon calls, and being double booked. And I don't know. Then I realized that the value from a lot of these calls was um, I didn't seem to be getting a lot out of them. So I was like, I mean, you could handle all this stuff over email. So I'm just like, fine,
Yeah.
we'll just do that, and we'll see how that experiment goes. I mean, it's working so far. I mean, it's definitely made me a lot less edgy or on edge, I guess. You know how it is. You're just in meetings all day, and I mean, you're just frazzled. And what was it for at the end of the day, right? So,
Stressed out and context switching, right? Like we're not.
mhm,
Multitasking is a myth. You can't
right.
multitask. And constant context switching, and then you lose track and you forget. Yeah, it's like finding that balance, I think, is where we need to be. And then the like constant stream of information is quite fascinating, with all the devices around us. So much information at our fingertips, but like too much.
Hmm. Way too much. Well, and the thing is, it feeds on itself. So the more information you consume, the more information you want. So it's like a
Yeah.
dopamine thing where I don't
Mhm.
know about you, but I read a ton, and it's like the more you read, the more you want to keep reading. And
Mm.
so, but at least that's hopefully beneficial as long as you're not doom scrolling on Twitter or something like that. But it's
For me, it's like the more I learn, the less I know, the more I want to know, and it just like that
mm,
again, an anxiety-inducing cycle of like you read because you're like, I want to feel smarter, but in the end, like after you're done, you're like, oh my God, there's this other thing that I don't know anything about. Now
mm.
I feel even worse about myself, even though I actually know more, but I also know less
Well, why do you feel worse?
because there's all these other things that I don't know. But again, I think it's like it just like I am a learning junkie, and I want to know like kind of I want to know everything about everything. So and that everything about everything is a lot.
It is a lot. It is a lot. And I only talk about Charlie Munger, but it's for good reason because I think he's a good example of somebody who learns a lot. But he proposed the idea of mental models, right? So you'd study the foundational things. I think there are like 90 of them or something like that, like the basics of chemistry and psychology and like biology and everything else. But he felt like if you could understand the big ideas in the world, then it gives you a good foundation to assess anything that comes at you because you have a mental framework. You're able to attack things from all angles. I thought that was a really interesting um, way of approaching things because it kind of defies the whole notion of being a specialist to some degree. In some ways, it doesn't, but it makes you like I guess quote well rounded as much as you can be these days. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you subscribe to that approach or
I haven't, and I don't know I'll be able to, but I'll look it up.
yeah,
So it's also kind of like how your mind works and how you operate, and there could be all
yeah,
these like self-help books and frameworks if your mind doesn't work that way. Like
yep,
I know that there's certain things that I just don't get, and no
hmm,
matter how hard I try, and I'll give like silly example, like I can't draw. I just
mm.
can't. Stick figures is where I'm at. No matter how hard I try, I just can't. And I've accepted the fact that perhaps art is not my thing.
Not
Um,
with that attitude.
it's like it's definitely not like keep practicing, you'll get better. No, I just do not have that skill at all. Or, direction, sense of direction is another thing that just completely skipped me.
Let me ask you this though: are your kids, your husband, are they good or bad or pretty neutral at drawing?
So my husband is great. My oldest is drawing comic books. So they
Okay,
have it, I don't. So I'm gonna rely on them for my artistic needs.
interesting. So I just wonder how much of that is like nurture versus nature in some ways, right? Like I drew a lot when I was a kid. My 12-year-old, he's a professional artist already, and but my other son, he's has little to do with it. He just goes skateboarding all the time, and that's what he does. So
I kind of like,
it's
let me give
interesting.
you an example, maybe you can relate better to dancing. Can you dance, or are you like, so it's, you can't, like, you either have it or you don't.
There's a joke that DJs don't dance. So like,
um, so it's like
yeah, there's something
there's
to it.
natural talent, and I think I mean, art is obviously a great example of when people like, art is not paint with wine, right? Art is creating something that hasn't been created before.
Yeah.
Um, so to me, what we do is also like that. Some of us are just naturally better at something. Yes, you can learn, you can be decent at it, but I also see people around me that are just incredible, right? They have talent for whatever it is that they're working on.
Well, yeah, and I mean back to our field too, which is data and technology. I mean, I think that a lot of ways people like you and I are artists just in our own way. We're creating new things and thinking of new ways of perceiving the world. I did a good podcast episode with Chris Jenkins a bit ago, and um, he didn't think he was an artist, but I'm like, he picked up functional programming for fun because he wanted to explore new areas of his craft. I'm like, that's I
Yeah,
could call you an artist, and the way you think, the way you describe things is art, right? And I see you as an artist, the way you think about the field, and I think your ideas are helping push the field forward, and uh, so I mean that's also art. That's creating new
right.
things. So
100% agree. And I know, like, we were like, it's logical, but it's not. There's like a balance of, I remember like back in the day when I was, optimizing database and creating indexes, and like, creating indexes is not science. It's a balance, right? There are trade-offs. So it's like, it's an art, because you have to think through, and it's not like ABC, it's like AB, and then actually think through it. How do you create something once that helps, a million different things? Um,
hmm. Well, I guess I guess the notion of inspiration for artists is always is a debatable one. But like, what motivates you when you're thinking about this, say, the state of the data industry right now, right? Like you definitely have some hot takes on what the industry's like these days. I mean, where do these ideas come from?
Oh my gosh, like, so the constant fire hose of information, right? And just kind of like, I mentioned to you earlier when we catching up, just cognitive overload, honestly, like too much.
Mm,
But at the same time, what motivates me, like, how do I, whatever I build, how do I position it so that it's easy to adapt to tomorrow? Like,
mm,
because I don't want to build something that is like becomes legacy, right? And at the rate of things that are changing, there's constantly new things that we're not aware of. So this is kind of like where my mind's at all the time. How do we position ourselves in a way that we can easily adapt to whatever the new thing is, and that new thing might not even exist yet. So it's like, and the the state of technology, yeah, I don't know, every day is something new.
yeah, I mean, what have you learned about adaptation? I think it's a pretty interesting thread.
Like, oh, like, learned as in nothing is permanent. Nothing we do is permanent, basically. It's kind of like interesting. We have to be nimble and agile. We must be. We have no choice. And kind of living, to me, an example, like living in the data center world
Mm,
20 years ago, and now not living in that world, like 20 years is not that long of a time. So how do we, and now like things are innovating even faster, right? So how do we position ourselves, our companies, our teams, that we can easily bring new stuff in? And I don't have an answer, so I'm still kind of struggling through that, because in the past, right, like new releases took a year. Now new releases take a day. New technology took 3, 5 years. Now you blink and there's something new. So
hmm.
how do we like? I don't have an answer, but I think about it all the time.
You brought up an interesting word, legacy. Like, what? I guess because things move fast these days, what is legacy?
Well, I have this, like, one of my favorite topics is like, today is tomorrow's legacy. Truly.
Hmm.
Whatever we're doing today will be outdated tomorrow.
Yeah.
So how do we? set ourselves in a way that we can easily swap, improve, adjust what we're building today for tomorrow's world.
It's an interesting notion. We were writing the Matt and I write in the book. I think the hardest chapter we had was the chapter on data architecture. I think precisely because of what you just said, where it's, um, and we also had this thing. I think it was Corey Quinn who said it, but it was like I think he said something like legacy is a condescending term for things that make money. So you want to balance it against like that notion as well. Um, but I think that what we settled on for architecture, at least in the modern parlance, was something along the lines that, obviously has to fulfill the business needs, but you should evaluate your decisions through the trade-offs, and making ideally reversible decisions
Yeah.
that you can get out of. I think Jeff Bezos called them one-way and two-way doors, right?
Yeah.
So you want two-way doors, not one, unless you really know what's behind the door, and then go for it. But
Yeah.
that's a trick. And as you say, there's so many options these days, and there's so much cognitive overload that it's making a decision on which way to go is, I find that's really challenging. So
It's tough. And just talking through trade-offs is like so important. It's just fascinating. And you worked on diverse teams coming from different companies, different, you know, business areas, and everybody brings their own kind of like limit. And there's like obviously also like favorites, right? Like, do you like Microsoft? Did you hate Microsoft? Do you like
mm,
AWS, Azure, whatever that may be? Talking through trade-offs and kind of like listing them, documenting it is important. Um, and the other thing about legacy is like, I like words, especially when you pick the word that's like just the right one. So legacy has two definitions, right? There's legacy systems, that there's also legacy like, my grandma left me like $1 million. So you kind of want your legacy system to be that my grandma left me $1 million,
right.
right? Like you kind of want to like transition it to positive things. Like I build something, I walk away, somebody walks in and is like, this is super cool. I understand what it is. It's super simple. It's actually one of the original um, newsletters that you wrote, right? Like simple, keep it simple, avoid undifferentiated heavy lifting.
Yeah.
Like somebody walks in and they're like, I understand what you've done, and I also can easily even throw it away and put something else in its place. Like, so kind of like that $1 million, even though $1 million doesn't get you far, but that $1 million legacy is better than the other legacy.
Right, where it's more like you inherit a trailer out of one of those hoarders shows,
Yeah.
and you get to deal with that mess. Yeah, that was interesting. I remember at one client we had. It was a place I used to work, and they did. While I was there, they invested a bunch of money into. It was an e-commerce company. They invested a bunch of money into like a new forecasting system and um, new planning systems and all this stuff. And when I revisited there like over 10 years later, and I don't know what I looked on somebody's computer. I was just looking, they're working. I was like, "What? This is an interesting looking Excel report." And I was like, "I think it's the one that me and my team had made back in like 2007 or something like that." And they're like, "Yeah, we're still using it." I was like, "What happened to the other? Well, tell me about these other systems that were implemented." And like, "Yeah, we don't use them anymore. We went back to the Excel one." I was like, "That's." So I just sort of had to walk away afterward and just sort of. It was definitely a strange moment, right? Because we were trying to get away from that spreadsheet, but we're trying to get away from spreadsheets in general. But they think they found it worked better than the tools, which is, I guess, a testament to how great it worked. But also, I was like horrified, like that thing was not great. So,
Well, I mean, the greatest that
but
they've had, but also simplicity, right? And understanding. Kind of going
mm-hmm,
back to my like, not everybody can do everything. And
yeah,
I do SQL trainings every company I ever worked for, and there's a handful of people that will just like their eyes will light up and they'll love it, and there are some people that just like, I hate it, I don't understand it, I want nothing to do with it, and that's okay. But
interesting.
like Excel is one of those tools that everybody just gets.
Yeah,
So nothing wrong with it. If it accomplishes the goal, it's easy to maintain, people get it, it's easy to access, it's easy to ramp up on. Just let's embrace it. That's the other thing. It's like maybe comes with like maturity. It's like, do we have to fight it? Why do we hate Excel? Right? Like we
mm-hmm,
collectively as data professionals decided to hate on Excel. But the reality is, for everybody else, it makes sense. It's easy. They get it. It's easy to maintain. I mean, there are obvious reasons why we hate Excel, ungoverned, etc. But as a kind of like a user interface, it's actually brilliant.
Oh, it works. I mean, everyone understands it. I mean, I don't even, so I log all my workouts in a spreadsheet. I have for years. There's thousands of workouts in there, and it just, it's super nerdy, but that's what I use because it's the easiest interface on my phone. I just type in what I do, and then we're done, and I can
So
search
now
and
I'm like
compare it. And
torn. I don't know if like it's cool or like using Excel. What?
I don't know. I have a lot of spreadsheets I use, but the thing is, it's like, but I use them all the time for just mind mapping things because I don't know. Some people tend to think in terms of rows and columns. My wife does this too. She works in finance, and Excel is just sort of what everyone uses there.
Yep.
And the reality too of any business is that Excel is sort of the dark matter of data, right? I mean, it's the most widely used data platform in the world, and everybody uses it. It's way more popular than all the other tools that So what's interesting is there's just sort of a tale of two worlds. Like there's the world that you and I inhabit with it, which is quote officially data, and this is like you have data warehouses and BI tools and all this stuff, and now machine learning and so forth. But there's a separate world where people inhabit, and sometimes these worlds intersect, and sometimes they don't. But that's the world of spreadsheets,
Okay.
and
Yep.
that's just so. In a lot of cases, the data in these two worlds may or may not match. It may or may not.
Mm.
Yeah, it might be completely different. That's the reality. So
Yep.
but then I mean, but there's countless vendors out there, modern data stack or whatever that are off trying to solve whatever problems they're trying to solve. But I'm like the big elephant in the room is I think trying to get maybe trying to work better with spreadsheets. That's at least my opinion. If you can figure out
Yeah.
that dichotomy, you've got it made. But it's hard.
Yeah.
So it's real hard.
Yep.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. That's interesting, though. I mean, cognitive dissonance. I think another thing we were talking about before we started was just the sheer amount of uh, vendor noise right now, too. And that's how do you deal with that? I mean, you're head of data at a big company, and it's like I'm sure vendors hit you up all the time.
I
So
I don't know how to deal with it. So I respect people's hustle, right?
yeah,
Like I understand a salesperson is trying to sell, but I get hit so much. And I don't know how to balance that. I am curious, I want to learn, but I also don't have time. And there's
mm,
all this just I- every tool's amazing, and then there's like this new spiel of this is not a sales call. I mean, you're gonna tell me about your tool. This is a sales call. And the other things like you probably like I used to politely decline when somebody reaches out. I'm like, give me a quick, whatever paragraph of what this tool does in the link. I'll spend 30 seconds looking at it just so it's like in the back of my mind. But I don't
mm,
have time, like I don't have the need or I don't have the budget or I just don't have time right now. So thank you. This is not an invitation to continue conversation. So I took 10 seconds of my day to politely respond to you, to acknowledge your message. But everybody takes this as an invitation to start harassing me. So I stopped responding.
mm.
I'm like, you're turning me into a jerk because of like, and I don't like, I know everybody's trying to sell, like, I get it to make money, earn money, but like, I don't know. How do you deal with it? Like, I don't know how to be nice, polite, but at the same time, kind of firmly, when I need it, I'll reach out, right? Like I
Hmm.
want to know, I want to learn, but I also, when it's a no, it's a no. Like it's not a maybe or a yes when it's a no.
It's so hard. And if you want to learn about tools too, they don't. I mean, a lot of companies don't make it easy. Like you have to give them an email for a white paper and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And
Yeah.
so, then that puts you on the sales and marketing list. And so you just get, beaten down on that one. So it's hard.
And the other thing is like I was reading on I'm not sure how it ended up on my newsfeed. Somebody was saying, um, my team and I will have an hour once a month for a vendor to come in and do a demo. Kind of like,
Hmm.
I want to learn about new tools, blah, blah, blah. So we're dedicating time. But the problem is that a lot of vendors actually ask for your use case so they can adjust their demo to your use case. But I don't have a use case. I actually want to see a tool. So how do you balance that, right? Like it's almost like conflicting messages.
Mhm.
Vendors want to give you a demo that's catered to you. We got a friend. So you're
Right.
likelier to buy it. But at the same time, I don't have a use case. I actually just want to see a demo of your tool.
Mhm.
So that doesn't work either. Because I'd be happy to be like, once a month or once a quarter, we'll have an hour. We'll invite vendors to just show their tools to us, just so we stay current and kind of like keep up with what's happening. But I don't think that's going to work either.
No, no, it's such a balance because then you're inviting them back in again. It's sort of like inviting a vampire over to your house. They keep coming back after that. So,
Yeah.
and again, no offense to my friends, in the industry who run companies. I mean, I know a lot of people, and you do too. And it's like, it is what it is. But the vendor and prospect relationship is something where I've noticed it's gotten a lot more aggressive too. I think because of where the economy is right now,
Mm,
and I can't blame a lot of the startups, especially. It's like it's pretty dire out there, and you're gonna kick and scratch and get
yeah.
whatever traction you can, right? But it's one of those things. Where I was talking to somebody yesterday about this, and I feel like if you can zig where other people are zagging, you might actually have better success. Like instead of taking the well trodden path of doing LinkedIn like in-mail messages, for example, or
Mhm.
sending cold emails. It takes a bit longer, but develop a brand. Like I think Ethan Aaron does a fantastic job at this with what he's doing at Portable. He's doing it right. He's building a tribe of fans, and I think he's going to be really successful with that approach. I don't know what your thoughts are, but it's
100%. Ethan is a great example. The other example is there are certain vendors that are super aggressive, and it's kind of sad
mm,
because their tool is actually amazing. Blog, post about things, write use cases. You don't really need to harass people.
yep,
Like you said, like build a brand. Like I know I get quality, I know I get reliability, I know who you are. I've seen you around, right? Like I've seen kind of like the content you're putting out. It's high quality content. I will come to you when if I have a use case when the time comes. I definitely agree with that. But again, it's like I don't know. It's difficult to put out valuable content, and this is like also it's much easier to send cold emails.
but that's where you got to zig while others are zagging, right? It's like but the content's going to pay itself off. I mean, so when you are in the market for a tool, say Veronica's team is looking for a new tool, like um, all that content's already been written out there. It makes the assessment a lot easier. I mean, I can't tell you how many, the opposite, where I get on a vendor's page and I literally have no idea what they do, and I keep scrolling and I get more and more confused. You're talking about cognitive overload. This is
Mm,
like exactly the approach you shouldn't do, because I think what happens is people try and appeal to everybody, so the messaging is just really bland, completely meaningless, and
yeah,
ultimately doesn't help the reader arrive at any sense of what this company
right.
does. Services firms are guilty of this too. I'll say, and that's the other one where they're just like, oh, we help you get more value from your data. And I'm like, I have no idea what that means at all. Just
Yeah.
so
The other
it's
thing I get is I don't know if you get that. Uh, can I spend some time to understand your roadmap and this and that? I'm like, I can't
yeah.
share this with you. Why? I don't know you. Why? Hi, random person. Why would I share proprietary information like IP with you? Does that work for
Right.
anybody?
I don't think it. Well, I mean, on the surface, it shouldn't work. I mean, hopefully, people are wise enough to just say no. But I think you're always when we talk, I think you're always really good about asking this question, like, well, what's in it for you, right? I think and I think that's a question that whoever's listening needs to ask themselves when somebody comes to them with such a question. Well, what's in it for me? Like at the end of the day, like you're taking up somebody's asking to take up your time,
Right.
and they're asking for a bunch of potentially proprietary information. Like, what if you're even allowed to do that? What would you get out of this
Right.
transaction, which it is?
That's definitely, it's like kind of like we kind of come full selfishness, right? Like, what do I get out of it? And I was joking about it. I'm going to the Snowflake Summit, by the way, if anybody going, say hello if you see me wandering around, especially if I look lost. Uh, please bring me back,
Which is very likely.
which is very likely. Um, what was I trying to say? Oh, I got, can we meet for coffee? and this is not a sales pitch. Well, I mean, it is a sales pitch, but also coffee really like feed me, take me
Right.
to dinner. I'm just kidding, but like I don't, 15 minutes, 30 minutes. I don't know who you are. I don't know what you do. No, I don't have time. I'm sorry. Like you have to be better at like your elevator pitch. I think that's a big thing for me. If
Mm,
you give me a good elevator pitch of who you are, what you do, I'll read through it. I'll politely decline or potentially invite you to show demo or for discussion. But at the very least, that summary, I'll remember that. So if use case comes up, I will reach out. But don't give me like, hi, I like your content on LinkedIn, and the moment I connect, you're like, oh, we're selling this. Don't like
mm. Anymore
bait and
when people
switch.
do that, if they add me as a first connection, which I'm starting to run into the limit of that. So apologies if I don't accept people's connection requests anymore. But for ones I do, like the moment that if the first message is a sales pitch, right after the connection's accepted, or and that's the only message I get, I instantly remove the connection that I meet, and I move the conversation to other, which is just
Yep.
like purgatory for messages. You'll never read them again. And so I found that that's a good way, because otherwise, what happens is you keep getting messages like, "Hey, just following up on the last
Mhm.
message," and I do that about 30 times, and I just so
Yep.
I don't respond. And in fact, what I usually do is on the mobile app. So if you're on the browser, people can see if you've read the message sometimes. So what I'll do is if you're on the phone, it actually doesn't have that same
Oh,
capability. So
sneaky.
something to keep in mind. Yeah,
But
because
but I
the
don't even
moment they
like.
see,
Yeah.
well, they see your icon at the bottom though that you read it, then that's catnip for them to say, saying, "Oh,
Mm.
she must want us to read more."
No,
What were
I
you going to say?
don't. I mean, I truly like like I don't have time. My time is precious, and I would honestly
Yeah,
rather outside of work, I'd rather spend it on putting coming up with a valuable content.
yeah.
It's like my time is better spent on content than just repeating sales pitches that like I'll politely decline, and I mean no means no. This isn't an invitation to continue this
Yeah.
conversation.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think again, for any salespeople or marketing people listening to this, it's like hopefully you'll get the advice of this. I think because Veronica and I get hit up a ton by people.
Yeah.
So
Or maybe like propose something. How do we make this mutually beneficial relationship?
yeah,
Again, like I totally respect people trying to do their jobs. I
yep.
just don't know how to not become completely jaded and be a jerk to hardworking people.
I mean, it almost is what it is at some point, though, right? And then that sucks for the people who are good, because they get painted by the same brush, and
Yeah.
and lumped to that category of just hucksters and stuff. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's to the point now where if I don't know you or you haven't heard from a friend about you, I probably won't, probably not that, which in a way is bad, right? Because you're closing yourself off to,
Yeah.
the things that come out of left field. So that's a danger of it. But you value your time, I value my time, and it's the thing you don't get back is that time. And so
Yeah.
you can, but you could, well, because that's a known quantity, right? You can spend your time on the content that is going to be awesome and help move the needle for you, in terms of whatever you're trying to build, versus taking a gamble on some random call that
Hmm.
you know probably isn't going to go anywhere. Frankly, I mean,
Right.
you're not going to buy it, right? So
Yeah.
like, what's just gonna get a message a lot. Yeah, that's interesting. Where do you see everything going though? I mean, the data tooling space especially is sort of up in the air right now. I mean, what do you think is going to happen?
I think, I mean, ultimately, we need to get more efficient at processing a ton of data. I think
Mm,
that's where it's gonna be at, where it's going with whether it's LLMs or just in general, all kinds of data. Everybody's collecting everything. I also am hoping that we'll have some serious innovation in hardware. Again, I kind of mentioned to you before, but cloud is not cloud, right? It's a data center. And Earth is still a very much just a rock that we'll live on. It's not unlimited. With
mhm.
everybody wanted to process more data and faster, we are going to run out of compute capacity. Like, like I grew up with the data centers, like your server running out of capacity is a real thing. And I know there's a balance and all that, but ultimately we all trying to process more and more and more and more data and faster. So I'm
Hmm.
kind of excited, optimistic about, innovation in hardware, right? Like chips. Can we, and that's how like everything truly happened, right? Like there was this innovation and now all of a sudden like we're on the cloud and everything's amazing, but
Hmm.
are we outpacing our needs and demand outpacing supply?
Mm.
I don't know. So it's a
Well,
little
I know
bit
if you want to get it.
worrisome.
Well, yeah, if you want a GPU right now, good luck.
Yep.
Right. So yeah, yeah, it's interesting. And then you have the big I guess data platforms too. And if you're on their platforms, and you're hoping that they have the allocated the capacity for that too. And so
Well, but
it's
no, right? Like the cool thing about the cloud is that if you're not using capacity, it's all like you don't actually have all that
yeah,
capacity just allocated to you. So they kind of mix and match. But
yeah,
I think
yeah.
um like there were stories, right, that some region in Azure ran out of capacity. So,
Hmm.
and with the fun of LLMs and now us trying to crank through all of this, textual data, or unstructured data, right? Like our businesses, day-to-day business is going to be competing with the fun stuff, right? Like, your company is in the cloud, you're fully in the cloud, you need to run your business, day-to-day operation, hardcore, just regular stuff. It's again, basic economy 101, supply demand. If we're short
Hmm.
in supply, will the
Yep.
prices go up? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah. Yeah, again, I think you're seeing it with GPU prices right now. If you're
Yeah,
even able to get one, right, especially the newer NVIDIA ones, I mean, you're going to be bleeding through the nose to
yeah.
to, to, to get
Hopefully,
those.
NVIDIA keeps innovating and breaking laws of physics and whatever that
Well,
is.
well, yeah, and the big elephant in the room too is the Taiwan situation too. I mean, if that goes south, then it's like all the the chip, a lot of the chip capacity goes out the window too, and who
Yeah.
knows what happens with that. I mean, that's there's a really good book called Chip Wars. I don't know if you read that, but it talks about definitely the struggle of just the Taiwan Strait right now and how vital that is to everything on the planet right now. Like
Mhm.
if that disappears, I mean that's it ain't good. That's one reason that, that you're starting to see chips start to be manufactured in the U.S. Or at least a step starts making that happen, so you can start
Yeah.
to decouple those manufacturing, because that's a huge problem.
Hmm.
I mean, you're basically, if anything happens there, all bets are off. I think in terms of innovation. I mean, it could spur innovation too. By necessity, you're
Uh,
gonna have to find something new.
Yeah.
But
And that's a great example. Like we do innovate because when we have to, right? Not when the so it again, it's like now we come like full circle. Like, is it bad that we kind of jam ourselves into this, hard situation, or is it good?
mhm.
I don't know. Hopefully, we'll come out of it better on the other side.
We'll see. I mean, it's and I think at the same time the innovation's happening too. On the compute side, it's like Mother Duck, for example, is working on some cool stuff, and I think that maybe more localized computing could be a way to go too. Where maybe I always joke that the especially with the new generation of Macs and stuff, like that's basically your new on-prem device is your laptop. I mean, I got a Mac Studio the other day, and that thing is ungodly powerful, right? And it was cheap too, like under
Hmm.
$2,000, and with the education discount I got, and I was like, dang, this thing it's beastly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So right, I mean, you could do a lot of workloads there. So I think that's part of the reason that Mother Duck decided to do what they're doing is just because it's like, I don't know,
Right.
laptops are really powerful. It's not the same stuff. So
Hmm.
yeah, it should be interesting. Well, cool. Yeah. Anything else in your mind? Any appearances you're gonna be at soon, or
Well, I'll be at the
talks?
Snowflake Summit, so like I said again, please stop stop me, say hello. That I think I'm gonna just take it easy for a little bit. It's been talking about actually kind of like you're such a great putting content together for like a presentation. How long does it take
Mm.
you?
It depends on the presentation. I'll tell you what I've been doing recently for the audience. I'm just holding up a piece of paper. I just write things out, and I just take this to my talk. I don't do slides sometimes.
Mhm.
How about what's your
So
experience?
so it's like I stress over it. Like it's funny. It's like my high because the adrenaline after the fact is awesome. But I like I'm preparing for the Snowflake Summit for a presentation, 45-minute presentation with the demo. I probably already put in, I don't know, 20 hours into it. And that's something I already had that content. So I'm just kind of like revisiting, improving. And this isn't counting actual practice. So it's like a, say, roughly 35 to 40-minute talk, which I'll run through 4 to 5 times. It takes so much time and energy. And I just kind of like, if you know somebody who's actually doing like writing blogs, give them a hug. I don't get paid for
Yeah,
it. I do it because I enjoy it, right? And then it's like, so I'm like, I'm gonna take a break. I think my anxiety level is too high. I need to take a vacation from this.
it is work putting together a talk for sure, right? I think it's underappreciated. And hopefully some of the conferences recognize the amount of work that the speakers put into, because it's an ungodly amount of work.
Yeah.
I mean that's one reason too. If I can get away with it, I actually try not to use slides anymore, because it's and just paper notes, handwritten notes. It's really old school. But when I what got me thinking about this was when I look back at like a lot of the memorable talks in history. I don't think anyone used PowerPoint.
So I don't know. So I have like I am all about memes. So
Mm,
generally, if I'm not locked by you can't use this image, there's a lot of memes and kind of like funny, like not super duper geeky images. And I think that
yeah.
makes people feel better. Like that's just my thing. So I don't know if I'll be, well, I mean, I can use a ton of analogies, but I find that my talks are better with like these slides that have like 3 bullet points and a
Hmm.
funny image. Like that's just my
Right.
thing. So I'm like, but you're right. It's people don't always remember content. They remember how you made them feel. So
That's
like
entirely
I'm
it.
generally going for like funny analogy. That's just my thing.
Yeah, but your talk's got to have personality too, right? And I think if you're doing memes and that fits with your personality and
Yep,
the type of vibe you have, then I lean into it for sure. That's what people are going to remember is Veronica's she's got good things to say and she uses really cool memes, and I
yeah,
probably laughed a lot during it. And I felt good about it because the thing is, what I notice is like when some people give talks that you can tell they're really uncomfortable with it,
mm,
right? And then they try and take like the format of like a TED talk or something, right? And it's very formulaic, uh, you know. And the thing is, doesn't really ring with the audience, as much as it could. I think if you're trying to just put yourself forward and let your quirk show too. If you stutter, I mean, I think that's awesome. Stutter
yeah,
away, as long as it like fits the, don't stutter
it, yeah,
repeatedly through the whole thing, but like, but make it work. Like lean into your quirks. Like
yeah,
I do a lot of crowd work. Because I listen to a lot of stand up comedy, and that's just kind of how I do things. I
mhm,
talk to the crowd. That's what I do.
yeah,
Because I also feel like a talk is usually a one way type of a thing. And if you can, and depending on the audience, obviously, if it's a big, stadium or something like that, you probably want to stick to your talk. But if it's a small crowd, I mean, I have no problem getting the audience involved because I really feel like it's a moment for them to, um, really participate in the because I don't know, it's the material and the discussion and whatever. So it's but I don't know. I mean, I don't prepare that much for my talks, but a lot of it's because a function of the fact that I since like high school I've been on the speech team. So I mean, I'm
yeah.
naturally like used to talking in public. So
It is like based on this conversation, kind of in time questions, right? Like you're not, there's no run of show. You're just kind of natural with it. But I'm with you. Like bring your quirks, bring your
mhm.
uniqueness, your imperfections. And I think the world we're going towards is like, I'm actually now looking for like spelling mistakes in content so that I know that
Oh yeah.
human wrote it. Like it's getting to the point where like your uniqueness and your personality is what will actually bring me to your session. You might be the most brilliant person in the world, but if you're not, if you're just kind of like monotone droning facts, I'll be like, I'll likely fall asleep.
Well, most people do, right? Or they tune out. They're checking. I mean, so my litmus test is who's checking their phones, who's on their laptops,
Yeah,
right? Um, so that's definitely a good thing. And the thing is, it's super easy to do now. I mean, it's but I always use it as a litmus test. And no, but you're absolutely right. The other thing I've been thinking about too is the I know we're coming up time in a second, but the with LLMs, kind of I think making content very homogenous and easy to do. The things that are actually going to be more, I think, relevant are in person talks, events, that kind of stuff.
yeah.
Like you can't for now you can't replicate it until everyone's wearing their stupid Apple Vision Pro goggles. But yeah, I mean, it's in podcasts too, right? I mean, that's one of the reasons I do them because I think it's just a medium that's going to be hard to replicate, at least for now. Give it a week.
Right.
There'll be a
Yeah.
Veronika deep fake out there that we'll be interacting with. So,
So I was like, oh, generated by AI, saying stupid shit. Sorry, swear
it's
on
all right.
on the podcast.
Oh no,
Maybe not.
it's fine. It's I think it's rated as explicit for that reason. So, you're not the first guess it's cuss. So, well, cool. Yeah, great having you on. Like, fun discussion as always. Yeah, hopefully we can make it out to Snowflake Summit and go hang out. But
Yeah, or
no
come
guarantees.
to the East Coast, in your
Yes,
world travels. Hopefully, you'll make it to this side of the country.
hope so. Boston's a lot of fun. Really like it there, and yeah, hopefully get together for another one of the Boston data happy hours at some point. So
That's right. Hopefully, and we'll try to plan another one around your visiting. Uh,
that'd be awesome. Thank you.
just give me a heads up.
Will do. All right.
Right.
For people who want to learn more about you or find out more about you, how can they do that?
LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn. Hopefully, not to sell something, but to truly connect. I love engaging with people and learning from
Hmm.
you as well.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks, Veronica. Have a good
Thank you for
day.
having me, Joe.
All
Bye.
right. Take care. Bye. See ya.